Joining us now, Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. Casey Hunt and Michael Steele are back with us as well. Representative Kinzinger, you stand with Liz Cheney. And where do you see this going? I'm at a loss of words as to how to comprehend the many Republicans who turned their back on her, who voted her out, and are doing it for lies. Against the truth. I think this is a new level that we're at, but perhaps you could put it into words better than me.
No, I think I'm about as speechless as you are. I think, the first thing to keep in mind is we don't know how many members would have voted against her because Kevin McCarthy did his little voice vote unity crap, to make it look like it was unanimous, because I honestly think she may have been retained, or, at least it would have been close. And he can now go out and say that we're unified and we're past Cheney. Look, Kevin went to Mar-a-Lago a couple of weeks after January 6th, and he put these paddles on Donald Trump, resurrected him to life. And now Cheney has just been consistent. She said the same thing that, Kevin McCarthy said in January. She's just been consistent. And then to watch yesterday, I didn't even know Congressman Clyde was a congressman, by the way. But to watch him, say that January 6th was no big deal. This party's really sick, and this party needs some real help. And if we're not going to stand up and be willing to put it all on the line for that, this party's not going to be around in the future.
So the Washington Post reported that the Republican leaders withheld polling data from you and other Republican members at a retreat that showed Trump's unfavorability ratings were a shocking 15 points underwater in core districts in the party, that they need to retake the House. How do you respond to the NRCC caring more about covering for an ex-president than helping Republican members get reelected? This is like a sickness that runs deep, and the only thing that explains something like this, from my point of view, is reading like Madeleine Albright's book about fascism. Or reading books about cults.
Yeah, it's like something you'd see out of North Korea, where we just can't make the dear leader mad. We have this and this bad economic news. Don't make the dear leader mad. That's what it feels like. Look, if you're paying NRCC dues to the committee, they need to tell you everything they have, including the bad numbers, because these are decisions that members have to make. And instead, we are so scared to death of Donald Trump. By the way, Donald Trump just made Liz Cheney even more of a national figure than she ever was. She's brave. I've always admired her, but he now made her the leader of that. And I think he's basically created something that he should be very afraid of, which is somebody that's going to tell the truth. Because next to Donald Trump, when somebody tells the truth, it's pretty obvious. So look, we're in a bad place in this party. There's no doubt about that. But this party and this country particularly demand people fight for the soul of it. And that's what I'm going to do with Liz and whoever else wants to join us. Maybe a small group at first, but we'll be mighty in the long run.
Yeah, Congressman, that's a lonely table in the members' dining room right now, but maybe you'll add some members. I'm curious to ask about your specific situation, because what we hear over and over again is that a lot of these Republicans are saying things publicly they don't believe because they know it's what their voters want to hear. But when we look at your district, Donald Trump just won there in 2020, that district, by about 16 points. You've been very publicly critical, and we're very publicly critical of Donald Trump. You won by 30 points in your district. So what do you say to some of those members who say, boy, I can't criticize Donald Trump at all, or I'm going to lose my seat?
Yeah, so that's true. The only one I think that really has not outperformed Donald Trump in their district was like Matt Gaetz, and people like that honestly got the same number as Donald Trump. If you look at any other member of Congress, they usually beat Trump by 2 or 3, and then people like me beat him by a far bigger margin. I think the lesson out of that is people still vote for you if they believe you believe what you're saying. You can disagree with me all day long, but I think there's a lot of people that still vote for me because they know that what I'm saying is what I believe. And if you're out there just trying to toe the party line and pretending like January 6th was a whole decade ago, so why are we still talking about it? And, ignoring Michael Fanone's interview, who I've become good friends with. By the way, he tried to call and meet with the minority leader, Kevin McCarthy. He was hung up on. McCarthy, has never watched his interview as far as I know, and yet going around defending President Trump. I don't get it, but look, the bottom line is I'm at peace doing the right thing, and that's a good place to be.
You mentioned Officer Fanon. We got CNN got new body cam footage in of just disgusting, appalling, and near-death experience for Officer Fanon as he was on the ground pleading for his life while he's being beaten. You see one of the attackers here saying, "I got one," talking about a police officer. Someone stepped in and ultimately saved Officer Fanon's life as he begged for it, as he talked about his kids and said, "Please, I have kids." And he said later he thought about his 4 daughters and how they were going to go on without him. But as you listen to those congressmen yesterday in the Oversight Committee hearing saying things like, well, these were just on January 6th, it was just tourists strolling through Statuary Hall, or they were peaceful protests, or they were just a bunch of misfits wandering around the Capitol. What do you do with that? I mean, these people were there. They know what happened. So now they're just spouting a conspiracy theory. They're truthers about that day. They're lying about that day. What do you do with members like that?
Yeah, and the sad news is they can go on whatever media outlet and say that and not be questioned. And so that's what they'll do. They'll go to their little media corner that won't question them, that wants to echo that conversation. Same reason Kevin McCarthy only does, one TV station at all, because he doesn't want to take the tough questions. And so I guess all you can do is keep calling that out as ludicrous. We sometimes assume that everybody just knows, but keep in mind, if you're a base Republican voter and every one of the people you trust is saying January 6th didn't happen and the election was stolen, we can't really blame them for believing that. I mean, yes, they shouldn't believe it, but when all their leaders are lying to them, of course there's going to be many that believe it. That's why, sadly, there's only a few of us, but we have to keep telling the truth. Like I said, I've known Mike Fanon. When I watch him screaming in that video, that is not, the typical Mike Fanon, who's a tough dude. To see him at that level means he truly feared for his life. And as somebody that's been in a similar kind of situation like 15 years ago, all those thoughts go through your head very quickly, including I'm going to die and all that stuff. And it's terrible to see, but he's been a hero to speak so openly about it.
Absolutely. Congressman Casey Hunt's here with a question for you. Case?
Hey.
Congressman, good to see you. Liz Cheney talked to our colleague, Savannah Guthrie. We showed a little bit of that. But I want to ask you specifically about one comment that she made. She talked about the January 6th commission, which, of course, you still haven't been able to find bipartisan agreement on. And Cheney says, I've been very public, this is her speaking, about the commission and saying that it needs to look only at January 6th and the events leading up to it. And she says that kind of intense, narrow focus threatens people in my party who may have been playing a role that they should not have been playing. What do you know about what she's talking about there? Who's threatened? And particularly, what was Kevin McCarthy's role and any of your concerns about it?
Yeah, I think all that stuff's at question. So with Kevin, I mean, we know at one point that he claims to have talked to the president and yelled at him. And then later, of course, he was defensive and said, well, the president put out a video. I think there's some real questions there. Kevin recently said that when he talked to the president had no clue that this was happening and then did the video. Well, let's think about this. Supposedly he had also called a senator, told him to continue objecting. That senator told him what was going on, that, Mike Cheney or that Vice President Cheney was being hidden. And so you look at all that and you go, something doesn't make sense. Plus, that's going to find out who was talking to these groups prior. What coordination had happened. I agree with Liz. If we want to start bringing, BLM into this and start bringing Antifa, all we're doing is trying to have false equivalency to what happened on January 6th. I was against the riots this summer, right? But that didn't threaten democracy. January 6th, you had the number 2, 3, and 4 person in line of secession to the presidency, all within striking and murdering distance of a mob. No equivalency. And so I think it needs to be focused on what led up to there, who coordinated with who. And if some of my colleagues get in trouble, they should have thought about that before they had, took part in an insurrection.
Congressman Michael Steele has a question for you. Michael?
How you doing, my friend? Good to see you this morning. Meek and I had a discussion a little bit earlier, and at the core of it was frustration and angst about where we are as a nation and why our party is playing the role it is playing right now. Could you speak to the American people about their frustration in watching this once proud party sink as low as it has, and to engage in the level of fascism, white nationalism, and the kind of purging that we just witnessed yesterday with Liz Cheney? Because I think that's a real drumbeat for a lot of Americans right now. They don't understand. And you touched a little bit on your own personal feelings and sort of looking around and seeing members and saying, is this guy on our team or what? So how do we process what we see happening right now with the Republican Party?
Well, look, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are it's just a big group of people that make decisions. That's it. There's no massive kind of behind smoke-filled room party, machinery. And right now, people are intimidated by Donald Trump. Yeah, and that's just, we have to recognize that. But if you are a once proud Republican or you're somebody that's concerned about this, you have a role to be involved in bringing the narrative of politics back. We can't be the first generation that leaves our kids a country worse off than the one we inherited, or a political system worse off. We can take back this power. So vote in primaries. I know primaries stink sometimes, and we should reform the whole system. But for now, vote in a primary, right? Make sure the right people that are going to represent you get through. I started the whole Country First movement, and I'll make a plug, country1st.com, because that's all about taking back the narrative of the party and putting the country before the party. If enough people do that, we'll take this back. So I'm optimistic long term, but on the short term, people are going to have to get ticked off enough to do something about it. And that doesn't mean, just looking at leaders to fix it. It means becoming a leader and having an impact. We can do this on either party.